Hey guys, we're here to engage in a little conversation today on diverse and racial reconciliation, something all four of us are passionate about. And we're passionate because the four of us here, we've given our lives to Jesus, and we know that the death, burial, and resurrection opened up the gates of heaven for people to go in, but also for the blessings of heaven to come out. And we see throughout Scripture how the story of Jesus, the story of God, brings people together from all tribes and races. So there's so many other voices that could be and should be here, but for today, it's the four of us with our limited experience to talk about life and to celebrate what has gone right and to also talk about some of the things that are missing. Let me ask a question. I'm just going to toss this up for us to dialogue about for a little while, but sometimes in conversations about race, what I hear from people, and I haven't heard this from many of my black friends, but what I hear from people is, let's just not talk about it. Yeah. If we don't talk about the past, then we don't have to go through some of the events that were etched in our memory. Let's just not talk about it, and it can help lead us to a healthier place. So what does it mean for us to remember in healthy ways, and why is that important?
As you say, none of your black friends would ever bring that up. Because what you're asking for is, I need for you to be inauthentic. I need for you to disconnect from a lot of your past. I need for you to disconnect from a lot of your hurt and say that it happened, but it's done and over with, so let's just forget your hurt. Let's just forget your past. It's to say to my parents and my grandparents, you know what you've been through, it doesn't really matter anymore. Why don't we just move on from that place? But I can't be authentic without my past coming with me, right?
That's right. Yeah. One of the things I've noticed is, I think we're inconsistent because, for instance, we'll say things like about Pearl Harbor, man, don't ever forget.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll say about the Holocaust, oh man, don't ever forget.
Remember the Alamo.
Oh, of course. And so the whole thing is that, like, okay, so what am I supposed to remember? What am I supposed to forget?
Yeah.
But I think part of it is, Josh, that sometimes people think that the path forward is so different than the path we're leaving, that there's no connection. When in reality, it's all a continuum, which I think you said a few minutes ago, remember some of the good, try to bring to the table some of the things that were just downright awful. And I think it scares us to bring up the awful, because I think we fear that if you bring up the awful, it will somehow chase us into the future and we'll never move forward.
I think it's also important to understand that what has happened to African Americans in this country has been a very traumatic experience. And telling African Americans to get over and don't remember what happened to you as a people is equivalent to telling a rape victim. You've been raped, you've been dehumanized, you've had your humanity stripped from you. And so now it's time to get over it. And so we would never think of saying that to a rape victim. And today we sit here on the Saturday between Good Friday and Easter Sunday morning. And I am sure that we are remembering what happened to Jesus on that horrific Friday that we call Good Friday. It wasn't so good for him, but it was mighty good for us. But what happened on that Friday was a victimization. I mean, a human being that we believe was the Son of God was treated inhumanely. I mean, just the most intense pain that you could imagine. He suffered that. And our communion service is done as a way of remembering the victimization of Jesus. And we care about that. We care about that. And even though we were not there physically or literally, we all admit to the fact that through our own humanity, we participated
Yes.
in the crucifixion of Jesus.
Right.
And so if we can honor what happened to him and remember that horrific event every time we meet on Sunday during our communion, then if a similar traumatic experience happens to a people collectively,
yes.
then that says that the people of God, I think, should be drawn into some type of caring about the traumatic experience that those people went through, and do I care enough to address that victimization, to help cure that so that they won't continue to live with a victim mentality. But we can't condemn people for having a victim mentality if we don't step forward to try to do something to address it and to help people move beyond that in a healthy way.
I think that as a white person, okay, faithfully remembering as a white person, what I fear in the color I'm wrapped in is I don't know what guilt will do to me.
Wow.
What is the weight of my guilt? So if I step in and I say, hey, you bet I am wrapped in the skin of the oppressor. I am wrapped in the culture of systemic and systematic oppression. I am wrapped in so much privilege because of my color, I don't even know where it stops and starts. So if I own all of that, well then my question then becomes, well, how guilty am I? And what does that mean? And will there be, is my guilt a bottomless pit? Is there any floor to this thing? And I think and I want to hear you speak more about this, I think when we are willing to sit in that place, well then we'll discover that it's not a bottomless pit.
I think fear is the greatest hindrance to people in the church actually becoming and being one, because I think we have been educated effectively by our fallen world that teaches us that your existence automatically means my extinction. Okay. And so I think the driving fear is, by most groups, would be the fear of non-existence. And so you begin to ask the question, am I afraid that one day the race of people of which I'm a part will no longer exist on the earth? Whether it is by racial extinction or by racial genocide. And so you have fear operating in the people who are in control and in power, and you have fear in the hearts of people that are being controlled and being oppressed. And so you have fear operating from both locations. And by the mere definition that one drop of black blood makes a person black, by definition of that particular belief, it says that even the person that's in the Oval Office right now is viewed all the way as being black. He had an African father and a white American mother. But because of the fact that he has black blood in him, he is totally classified as black, no longer white. So I think the fear, what does that fear look like? The fear of racial extinction by the fact that your black presence is a threat to the existence of the white race upon this planet. And I think that fear has to be looked at, it has to be examined, it has to be owned, because, as I've said earlier, that's what the cross is all about. It calls us to, as Bonhoeffer says, it calls us to die. And unless we're willing to do that, then I'm not going to drop my guards. You're not going to drop your guards. And we're going to continue to keep our distance from each other because of the fear of either extinction or annihilation.
We do live in a culture of entitlement.
Say more about that.
Speak on that.
I think there are some who feel entitled out of a mindset of, look, I've escaped all that,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So I'm on the other end,
Yeah.
or I'm entitled because you owe me.
Yeah, yeah.
So you owe me, so we can get on the level playing field.
Yeah.
And if a culture is being driven by entitlement,
Mm-hmm.
then I mean that keeps me from wanting to take a risk to truly believe that
Yeah.
the incarnational way, the empathy. Maybe you do have something to teach me. A prayer that totally ruined me when I moved to Memphis about 5 years ago. And call it out of context if you want, but in Luke 19:41, Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a colt.
Yeah.
And it says Jesus wept over the city, right?
Yeah.
Knowing he was about to die and lay down his life so that people could have life. And the prayer I started to pray was, God, help me to learn how to weep over my city and the
Yes.
brokenness
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then to lay down my life and resources so that people can find life.
Right,
Yes.
right.
And it ruined me because God started moving in that prayer. And God started teaching me that there are 2-year-old African Americans in my city who were born with AIDS because nothing they ever signed up for,
Yeah.
who ended up becoming some of the greatest professors I've had. Because God moved me to a place of, I want to live from a place where the image of God is in you, whoever you are.
Yeah.
And you have something to teach me about life. Now, if I'm coming this from, I'm entitled, I have truth,
Yeah.
and I don't need to listen to you, you
I
only
hear
need
you.
to listen to me.
Yeah.
Right.
But if we come at this believing that, maybe the most powerful phrase we can speak to someone is, tell me a story.
Yeah.
Wow, that's huge.
Then I become not just one who speaks, but one who listens. Jesus did this.
Yes,
I mean, Jesus was always asking
great at it.
questions.
Yeah.
Even in John 4, I mean, he engages this woman in a dialogue.
Yeah.
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 It's huge. But that reminds me of a term that you've used several times in our ongoing discussion. I want you to speak into it, this idea of microaggressions. Unpack that for us, because I think it's important as we look at barriers and hindrances and chains.
Well, this really has reshaped my vocabulary, right? Because sometimes if we have a word, then you can begin to find meaning.
Yeah.
So, years ago, this research was done on this concept of microaggressions, a look, a word, that gaze that says to the people on Rosa Parks' bus, what are you doing in that seat? Well, see, that's a microaggression.
Yes.
And see, microaggressions, we are able to get away with them because most of the time, they're not something that is illegal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's real.
Illegal. And then the second thing is most of the time, nobody wants the trouble
Wow.
to go ahead and deal with a microaggression.
Yeah.
Right?
So everybody becomes complicit.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
See, so you're in a situation where I was telling you guys, my wife finds this great doctor. She loves him, OBGYN, great guy and everything. So her friends are like, hey, man, tell me about your doctor. She's like, oh, such and such, boom, boom. Well, they come back and they're like, well, you didn't tell us he was black. Well, you asked for a doctor.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what all you wanted to know. But see, that's microaggression.
Yes.
It says, oh, well, he doesn't actually belong. She doesn't actually belong, see, in that position. Or, and coming to your word, almost always when you hear the word entitlement, which I'm so thankful you spoke to, it's not about me being entitled because I was born in a color skin that in this country has so much privilege born with it that I'm not even sure what to do with it all, see? So when we hear the word entitlement, it's almost always about
Yeah. Yeah.
the poor,
Wow.
black, immigrant, see? And so, oh, well, they're just entitled. See, that's microaggression. When you look at the way someone dresses, they dress culturally. Oh, can you believe they're wearing that? Well, hey, they might think, can you believe you're wearing that? It's microaggression. When you tell a racist joke, when you pass on a racist joke, when you make a race the butt of something humiliating, all of those are microaggressions.
Yeah.
See, and what we're not taking responsibility for because they're not illegal, and because people don't confront it because they don't want the trouble. You see, so we're not taking responsibility for feeding the fire of the anger.
Wow.
Well, of the rage.
Well, let me, 30 seconds, okay, everybody. What does freedom look like from these chains? What does freedom look like?
I would say freedom looks like having the God-given capacity to care for people beyond my color and my community.
What does freedom look like, man?
Man, I think it's Exodus language. I mean, freedom is being released from bondage, and not just being released from bondage, but released with a purpose. We have been propelled to live a whole new kind of life that changes the world.
Wow.
And diversity is at the heart of that.
At the heart of it. What does freedom look like?
Goodness. Wow, I didn't know that. I forgot that was coming. But freedom to me means that I'm not going to try to tell you your story.
Yeah.
That's rich.
I want to hear your story, and I'm going to resist telling you
Wow.
what I think your
your
story
story is.
is or should have been or ought to be.
Yeah.
I just want to hear it.
And so it goes back to the divine narrative that plays itself out to this moment of restoration and reconciliation before the throne of Jesus Christ.
You ask 10 different restoration churches, what does it mean to restore? You're going to probably get 7 or 8 different answers. But you're touching on something here about, it's not about restoring patterns, it's about restoring the spirit. And I would even add to that, it's about restoring the kind of relationships you see played out in the New Testament. The New Testament would be so much shorter if there wasn't a passion, especially in the life of Paul, to bring together Jews and Gentiles. The easiest thing he could have done would have been to write churches and say, hey, I'm writing to churches in Galatia or Ephesus. And let me make it easy for you guys. Jews meet on the east side of town. Gentiles meet on the west side of town. Come together on Wednesday nights once a year and shake hands and do a little singing and be nice to each other. But I mean, the way he interpreted the story of Jesus, and what Jesus taught him even in his conversion, was that the story of God is bringing people together. And he gave his life for it. Ultimately, it's what helps get Paul killed.
Absolutely.
So when you start thinking about how Jesus propelled his followers and his apostles and Paul and the church to go and do the Christ life in the world, it was restoring the kind of relationships Jesus led us into. Community like that can be hard.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely.
It can be difficult.
In our restoration tribe, we are taught to look for things in the text. So we're looking for things like how to worship, how to tell someone how to be saved. See, we're looking for those things. But what you said a minute ago, I mean, all over the Gospels, all over Paul's letters, are all these messages about how we make space for each other and love each other and engage with each other and overcome all of these differences. But we weren't taught to look for those. So one of the things we have to be fair about and not critical about in regard to our movement, you look for what you're supposed to see.
That's good.
And so we need to help people realize, hey, there's more there you're supposed to see. So start looking for that.
Wow.
So that pattern theology has played into us not being equipped for this race conversation at times.
Wow.
At the heart of the restoration language is unity. I mean, it's a cry for unity. But it's often a cry it's cordial. It's more about, hey, be nice to people, not to actively pursue the kingdom of God and how the kingdom brings people together. So it's a cry for unity, but it's been more along the lines of let's be acquaintances, not let's share life together, because I think you have something to offer my children as I raise them, and we would love to pour into your children as well. Let's raise our families together.
Yes.
And again, I mean, with the Apostle Paul, this is, I mean, the heartbeat of his life was going into these places and bringing together Jews and Gentiles. We were talking earlier, just around, I think at lunch, about the book of Romans, which is bringing Jews and Gentiles who both felt very entitled when Paul was writing to them. And I love how in Romans 9, 10, and 11, especially 11, Paul's making the point about, you know, all Israel will be saved. And then he says, you know, the Gentiles have been grafted into the Jewish story. And when it comes to reconciliation, I think, especially in the Restoration movement, everybody wants to be the Jew in the story. We want you grafted into our story, but nobody gets to be the Jew in the story. We're all the Gentiles, who the outsiders, who have been grafted into the story of God. And that shouldn't lead us to a point where we're asking questions of who is in, who is out. Our response should be, thanks be to God. Let's do what you set in motion for us to do.
But how does that look? Okay, all right. Okay, we're in, you're out. We welcome you in, whether it's just being cordial or whatever. But how does it play itself out in race and in restoration history as it relates to the African American experience? What does that look like, especially in language? Because that's the key.
I think the emphasis on words is, I think it'll be helpful for us to understand the significance of words.
Yes.
Because words form thoughts.
Right.
And thoughts lead to a particular consciousness.
Good.
And if we don't pay attention to the words that go spoken in our inner being, then we lose the ability to take every thought captive. To pay attention to it, to look at it, and to see whether the words that are swirling around in my mind, whether they are words that bring life or whether they're words that bring death. And I think living in our culture today, we live in a culture that is running over with the language of death, the language of revenge, the language of bitterness, the language of anger, hostility, all of those things. And if we don't pay attention to the vocabulary that shapes our inner formation, because we transport information through the words that we export and that we import. So the words that you speak, they carry information which is able to shape my inner formation, the formation of who I am within. And so there have been words that have been deposited in my mind when I was 7 and 8 and 9, 10 years old that still live there. And so I have to take those words, evaluate them in light of the word, the language of God, and to see which words I need to hold on to and which words I need to eradicate from my consciousness by the empowerment of the Holy Spirit. Words are so powerful.
One of our African American elders' wives gave me this article 15 years ago. Just handed me the article. She's extremely bright and always wanting to help me get a little brighter. So she handed me this article and she said, read this and tell me what you think. So it was an article, and it was very well written, but it was about the idea of being colorblind. Okay, you know, so you talk about words getting deposited. So I read the article, I come back, I thought it was pretty well written. So she came back in, she said, what'd you think? I said, it's pretty good. She said, that's your problem.
Almost got it.
You know? And so I was like, you know, so I was like, all right, tell me. I need you to tell me. And she said, I want you to think about it. I don't want to tell you. You need to know that from the African American point of view, this is a problem. So you need to figure out why it's a problem. So I went back to the article. And I promise you, Eric, like I was telling you earlier, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like scales coming off my eyes. I got it.
Yes.
Inherent in the word colorblind
Yeah.
is that it would be bad if I noticed your color.
Exactly.
That's why I'm supposed to be colorblind. I'll never walk through a rose garden and say, "Oh, no yellow ones." Oh, no, you know. And so it makes no sense. Well, we talked about microaggression earlier.
Yes.
Back when that research was originally done, this is one of the things that came out then.
Absolutely.
When you say to someone, "I don't even notice your color," it begs the question, then what's wrong with me?
Yeah. Why can't you?
Well, yeah. So
Yeah.
what's so wrong with my color and me? And so what we realized immediately at our church was we need to shift the words that shape our consciousness.
That's right. That's
So we brought it to the church. I shared with the church my confession. I told them my situation. And then I said, we're going to what God created. Colorful.
Yeah.
Wow.
That I will absolutely notice your
Yes.
color or gender. See, I will absolutely notice that. And I will glory in what
Yes.
God has made.
What God has made.
Right. And I will explore His
Yes.
image
Right. Right.
in and through you.
Exactly.
And that, now, I think that might be a plus that the restoration movement has going for it.
Yes.
We like words.
Yes.
So if we
Yes.
could latch on to some good words,
Yes.
which is what you always say,
Yes.
we use a good word, then that can shape us.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Language becomes significant because at the point where I say, all right, I'm colorblind, then all of a sudden the language that's registered is you have nothing to offer unless I negate
Yes.
what you have.
Yes.
And then you come in and you assimilate. Now we're all together.
Yeah.
Now, but I need for you to leave that at the door, right? Isn't that huge?
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, and we use that phrase or that term as if it is benign, as if I'm doing you a favor
good word.
by neglecting,
Yeah.
by neglecting what you bring to the table. Okay,
That's strong.
Using your color as a license to hate the humanity behind the color.
wow.
If I'm colorblind, when I say I'm colorblind, that I'm not holding your color against you,
There you go.
then I can get with that.
Yeah,
So in saying it that way, it says,
Exactly.
I acknowledge your color,
yeah,
I celebrate your
Yeah.
color, because it is a part of God's great creative
Yes.
yeah,
creative experience that we call life.
yeah.
Yes.
Everything in creation has a variety to it. And for me to hate it is to say that the Creator messed up on this particular aspect of His creation.
He did something wrong.
He did something, He made a mistake with this one.
Yeah,
And so to embrace somebody else's color, their culture, their humanity, is at the same time acknowledging the fact that God did a good job. Matter of fact, He did a great
very,
job.
very. What did he say? Hey, it's not good. It's
Yes,
very,
very
good.
good.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
We have to be for real when we're talking about this conversation, that there are some conversations that black people feel comfortable having when it's just black people around. And I'm assuming that that is the case too, with my white brothers and sisters. And until we can get those conversations to kind of take place out in the open, and the space is created for me to, tell you what I'm really thinking, what I'm really feeling, and not having to think how this will be used against me.
Right.
Until we can get to that point, then the conversations will kind of define our relationships. Okay, this is our conversation, y'all have your conversation. So that us versus them kind of thing continues to exist until we can bring those conversations to kind of merge with one another, the good, the bad, the ugly, the realness of it.
Yes.
And if we can hang out there and let that be, then we may be able to grow to a better place as a result of doing that.
There's so many ways so many final questions I would love to ask, but I think ending with the word on the body of Christ, building up the body, is a great way to end it now, and just hopefully kind of leave it with a ... This conversation has to continue.
Yes.
Hey, all three of you make me want to follow Jesus with even more passion. So I'm just glad I was able to sit down with you, have this chat, have you as friends. Love you guys.
Mutual, very much, and thank you. Thank you so much.